The only weapon type in this game left that I have not personally tried out is the throwing knife. Doesn't sound all that exciting really, considering these are usually weak support options that give you something ranged. Well, to my surprise, they are really good. With 4 different options, you always have enough for the bosses, and picking the right type can make short work of them. Not to mention you pump dex and stamina without much else to worry about. So, this is my experience with throwing knives in Salton Sanctuary. Well, let's get this show on the road, folks. Thief is our class, letting us start with some throwing knives. Not enough to defeat the Deep, although you probably already guessed that. Iron ones for our creed will work well enough. 25 throwing knives sit inside the first area as we grab Bandaged Ring and Face Sodden Knight. This gives us 45 total items to work with. Spamming Forest Fangs at the start builds up poison, and enjoy this sight as we won't use these hardly at all after this. Normal throwing daggers are really solid for straight damage, and as long as we keep moving away from his lightning, we can chip him down little by little until he's nothing but a pile of salt. So our stats are Dex up to 50, and then as much willpower as possible. Selling the Twin Metal Ring and several other weapon types gets us the max of 99 throwing daggers. With the Wrapped Link Ring now equipped, we should have enough for Queen of Smiles. Something very cool about this boss is that she's usually really tough without holy papers. However, the daggers were hitting for yellow damage every time. Plus, you can simply throw from across the arena, saving just enough stamina to dodge after she rushes over. She was extremely passive, letting me melt her down really quickly. In the end, it did take about 57 throwing daggers, but that's not half bad at all if you ask me. Bright Coral Ring for the extra stamina leads us to the Stone Roots Creed, the best faction in the game, at least it is for us more cultured folk. We will want to rank up with a leader here, but before we do, let's give the old alchemist a shot. Not a fun encounter with low damage, which didn't come into play at all, as he's taking not that long really. Already I'm noticing that this playstyle of combat has one major advantage. You can always attack. No need to wait for openings or need to run up before swinging a weapon. These can be chucked almost across the entire screen if you aim up to arc them over. Grants really safe spots to sit in, forcing the bosses to move towards you instead. I still recommend a poison curing potion or two because the slimes will get you easily. Cyclops seems to take more damage than any of the other encounters thus far. You know, this brings up an interesting question. How good are the ranged options in this game's sequel? Salt and Sacrifice had some really cool weapons when I 100%ed it. You could actually cast magic from them, which I really enjoyed. But they added a ton of different throwing types that I never got to use. Fire bombs are pretty busted in Sanctuary, and as you can see, throwing knives aren't bad at all. At least so far. But Sacrifice bosses tend to be far more aggressive, so would they still be worth it? Might have to check that out sometime. By the way, I know my character customization looks a bit wonky. Trust me, it'll make sense soon. Forest Fangs can be bought from this creed's merchant for some poison buildup. These are perfectly fine options as they build up decent poison in exchange for lower direct damage. The reason you don't really use them past maybe now is they have a direct upgrade, which we will need to grab soon. And even then, regular throwing daggers seem to be more than enough to simply rely on instead. Nice to have a backup set just in case, although I do enjoy being pleasantly surprised about these considering I didn't expect much out of them. Jester was far more jumpy, making it harder to dodge everything. Faster and nimble makes him our perfect counter. However, he doesn't hit very hard, so no major risk. Collecting the Jester outfit, since it does look great with my hair color, we grab the Vertigo brand. Farming out Rotten Walkers, Drowned Bandits, and Feral Beasts, we can collect 75 Wraith Fangs from our leader. Much better poison knives that restock each time we rest. Since we just ranked up, we can also now purchase 99 Dragon Tooth from a merchant. And once in the Castle of Storms, you can take a significant amount of time, unfortunately, to farm out Court Sorcerers, granting even more Wraith Fangs for 100 in total. Officially, we have all the tools we need. Our creed is high enough that all throwing knife options can be purchased from a single merchant. We also have very strong new poison knives that scale far better into our decks. Dragon Teeth, the new throwing knife options deal fire damage, giving us physical, weak poison, strong poison, and fire. Worm shows you why we require so many different options. Nothing seemed to do that great outside the poison, meaning we need to keep up heavy pressure with Wraith Fangs to keep that going. Very lengthy fight that can be quite difficult. Using jumps to dodge and staying at a distance can get the job done. Wall jump brand leads us to, I think we're gonna go for dome instead of red halls. The Inquisitor was not very happy about this plan and took me out embarrassingly fast. Let's pretend that never happened. Okay, so let's see how good these fire options are. They don't look all that impressive per throw, but get multiple out in quick succession, and that burn puts in work. We are forced to restock after each and every boss fight. This keeps all our different options topped off with gold dropped from bosses. Gold is super easy to get as bosses drop a ton. Then again, if you manage to run completely out before beating a boss, things get far more tedious. Lots of farming depending on what's available at the time. Luckily, that first encounter with the Inquisitor was a goof. 40 fire knives later, he's cooked to a crisp. Third Lamb is easier than ever because of a neat interaction. If you manage to hit a boss when they're in the air, usually you can stop their movement. They still finish the attack, but will drop straight down instead of flying all the way towards you. Exploiting this, we can spam knives right before he goes to move and as far away from him as possible, baiting out that attack, which lets us keep attacking while he sits there dumbfounded. For some reason, you can even infinitely throw the knives past your stamina limit. Not a great idea since you do need stamina to dodge, but if that's not a risk, then sure, go for it. Dragon tooth knives are our best option as the fire melts him down quickly. Took around 75 of them in total as we're getting to the more beefy bosses. Hard Light brand is ours, although I don't really feel like dealing with the fiery undead king yet. Instead, let's fight the fiery metal tree. Normal throwing daggers work best. We can pick off the men one by one, slowly as to be sure we don't get burned alive. Aiming for his glowing head is relatively easy, though damage is not all that exemplary. Towards the end, I completely ran out of normal knives. Resorting to Wraith Fangs looked really bad until poison kicked in. Probably should have used those a lot earlier, but then again, who could possibly remember that a boss made out of metal can be poisoned? This one can't possibly be on me, I don't think. Technically, the poison damage we can build up is extremely powerful. In theory, we should do that at the start of every fight. I have used these before though in my poison-only run. Just feels fair to give the other options more chances to shine. So far, fire seems like the way to go. Like I said earlier, there's no reason to use the basic poison knives. Anytime they'd be good, my Wraith Fangs are already putting in work. Since we do have a sizable amount of stamina by now, dodging the Husk's fire blasts wasn't a big deal. He got me once or twice while I was getting greedy. Aside from that, he's an easy win. Dried King did manage to take me down. He made sure to do so with almost no HP left, so I had to be as annoyed as possible. Took me all but 13 Wraith Fangs as poison really carried me against him. Dodged through to avoid all 3 fire moves as usual. Then don't stand in his fire. This one's a long battle for sure, but usually pretty consistent to pull off. Ignoring my recent death, of course. Dart brand gets me down to Bloodless Prince, who isn't much different. We get all our Wraith Fangs out to mix in a good amount of poison. This time, however, we can use the fire to double up on statuses. He's slow going with such a healthy red bar down there. With me only getting hit once from his AoE slam, we move on to greater things. Getting past this split swordsman was the only difficult moment I had through dungeons. He just would not let me get past the really small platform. Coveted was a flawless victory as both burn and poison on them is one of the better strategies. Melee tends to struggle as you risk getting blasted by magic in order to move towards the axe. Instead, we sit under the ghosts, plinking small knives as quickly as we can. If only there were lightning knives, so we could add them in for the triple threat. To my knowledge, there aren't any, which is a real shame. They could call them shock points or something. I don't know, maybe you can come up with a more clever name than I can. I wouldn't doubt it. One thing that minutely annoyed me during this run was often it's very hard to tell which throwing knife variant is the most efficient. Fire has that extra burn, but doesn't chunk as much, while even the normal daggers often did just enough to justify using them. On the one hand, this is a good thing. If all the options are pretty good, then you won't be in risk of running out of one, then being forced to use bad damage. Then again, it would be really nice to just say, hey, these are the pick you should use. Generally speaking, Wraith Fangs do it all, and if I remember correctly, they also scale the best. To tell you the truth, there isn't much else I have to rant about. Ring slots are super flexible, letting me use the HP regen ring, which I always enjoy having. Bosses catch you every so often, although usually you can run away to safety, heal, and then get back to chucking sharp objects. Nothing was giving me any trouble at all. Every threat I thought would be an issue is already taken care of. Aside from one, who you could probably guess, seeing as he's always a problem with more out-of-the-box builds. Everyone else, though, got shredded through like Swiss cheese. Everyone, that is, except the large dragon himself. Scarge was going great, until I randomly rolled past him and jumped to throw, but instead managed to accidentally punch him with my bare fist. Well, that definitely isn't allowed. Redoing that all over again goes off without a hitch. About 20 some wraith things get a solid amount of poison going before we switch to fire. Both working in tandem is almost too much for this brute. There really is something about status effects being super strong that does it for me. Simply playing the waiting game sounds boring, but it's oddly satisfying. Heck, Scarlet Rot was always one of my favorite mechanics in Elden Ring because it was super rare but ridiculously powerful. Mal should have been tricky, as her magic covers every possible spot, and to give her credit where credit is due, she almost took me down. However, I am stacked at 50 dex by this point, which makes not only my direct damage look good, but it also greatly boosts my poison. Just look at that health bar sink down to nothing. Wow, these are probably a little too good. Then again, you won't see me complaining, not even a little bit. Knowing what I was up against, the stench got saved until we were at max power. Fire knives are our best bet because we need to take down the smaller mouths as soon as each spawns. Because we can't hit more than one target at a time, letting those minions rack up in numbers will be trouble. About 3 or 4 throws, depending on how long Burn gets to work its magic, is better than expected. We have enough time to keep the screen entirely clear while still hitting the large behemoth of gas at a constant rate. I wouldn't really bother with the Wraith Fangs. Technically, he can be poisoned, but it's gonna take a while and he's really resistant. No, instead we use up all 99 of our fire options and then swap over to physical for the last couple of hits. Easy enough, but thank goodness we waited to max out the build. That would have been a real headache without so many levels. Yeah, you know the drill by now. Use Redshift Brand to drop down with Ronin Cran, then double status him as he flails around all helpless-like. Unironically, using the only throwing knives is easier than several real weapon types can be in these runs. Heck, they seem way better than crossbows for sure, which are the more versatile offhand option to give you some range. Maybe spend a little bit of extra gold on throwing knives next time and there's no need to upgrade a secondary weapon. Sitting at 50 dex with 34 willpower, we descend into darkness. And oh my word, the Wraith Fangs are insanely overpowered. You throw them out so quickly that poison gets applied in seconds. Then you can send out even more to deal damage and speed up the poison ticks to absurd amounts. I mean, this is completely ridiculous. From a safe distance, you don't give the poor guy a chance. Use any other throwing knife, and yes, that poison does run out, as it needs constant pressure to keep up the status. I say whatever, because fire seems great, and heck, even the boring old throwing daggers are enough to just barely see yellow damage down there. Well, that was a quick final boss fight, if I ever saw one. So the question is, can you beat Salt and Sanctuary using only throwing daggers? Yes, like most weapons in this game, they're extremely powerful. Seems you can just take whatever you like, max out its potential, and become a menace to the land of Salt. I think having such insane range and attack speed makes these much stronger than expected. At higher dex, the poison buildup is overwhelming, and so good you might not rely on it as much, just so fights feel like fights. Forest Fangs are the only ones that feel weak, and that's simply because you have better options that make those obsolete. Throwing knives are not only a weapon type all on their own, but these are something I would highly recommend to try out if you get a chance. If you did enjoy this video, feel free to leave a like and comment down below. Would you like to see some Salt and Sacrifice content? I definitely think the first game is far superior in almost every way to the sequel. But, I don't know, checking out some of the new stuff they added to weapons sounds like fun. I will likely make a wrap-up video discussing each weapon type and giving my thoughts on which are the best. Because, yeah, we've officially tried every single weapon type outside of wands. And those are basically just slightly worse staves for one-handed builds. So, look forward to that, and I don't have much else for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.